Hi and welcome to Movies Suck. Okay, here we go. The release of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And again, Simu Liu is being... well, he's being Simu Liu, isn't he? This is what he seems to do all the time. I don't know if it's an advertising thing where he's just trying to get attention for his movie or what it is, but he's always coming up with some weird nonsense. And it kind of drives you crazy. I'm really looking forward to this film being over with and done so that we can just hear less from Simu Liu. I mean, I'm not saying that the guy is a bad guy. He doesn't appear to be a bad guy. He seems actually kind of witty and... okay, that's about all I've got about him. He seems reasonably witty. But yeah, the guy is just a bloody nuisance. He just won't shut up about some weird nonsense Asian agenda that he has in his mind. And it is just purely in his mind. It's absolutely crazy. Anyway, let's read this story on Bounding into Comics. Now, before I get started, please consider subscribing, as that would really help me out. And if you like this content, give it a like. On with the story. So, Shang-Chi Simu Liu claims, "I thought playing a guy that gets beaten up by a main character was the pinnacle for Asian actors." Forgetting all those numerous Asian actors who were the stars and did the beating up. Yeah, forgot about all those. Oh, dear God. Anyway, so Simu Liu has continued to ignore history in order to virtue signal for brownie points in the here and now, as the actor recently doubled down on his self-centered assertion that his upcoming Marvel film Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings will finally show audiences an aspirational Asian hero. Because there's just been no aspirational Asian heroes. They're just... Bruce Lee didn't exist, Jackie Chan didn't exist, Jet Li, no, these people didn't exist, Lucy Liu for women, no, these people don't exist. There's just no aspirational Asian heroes at any point. Not even John Cho, no, none of those guys. Just, where does he get this crap from? I really just don't get it. Anyway, Liu revisited his pompous rhetoric during an August 31st Reddit AMA session hosted by Marvel Studios subreddit. Throughout the online Q&A, Liu not only chose to respond nearly exclusively to softball questions with answers that felt forced and scripted, but in one particular instance, outright ignored a series of questions of genuine substance. I wouldn't go too far with that, but yeah, okay. They had a lot of questions on there. They're all pretty much pandering and fawning all over him. It was kind of sickening to read through them. I've got them here, in case anyone's wondering. You can go to the subreddit and read through some of these questions, and they're so pandering. It's not the most sickening thing I've ever read, but someone please throw him a decent question, a worthwhile question, not just one that says, "Oh, you're so great, how does it feel to be so great all the time?" And then he says, "Oh, yeah, it's hard work being this great, it really is." I mean, these questions are just really pathetic. As a Hispanic dude, I'm incredibly proud of you, especially with how you're representing yourself and your fellow Asian brothers and sisters. I hope Kevin Feige is working on a Mexican superhero flick. I wish you the best on all your future film roles. And then Liu replies, "One thing that I hope comes out of the hopeful success of this project is a realization that every community deserves to be represented in the superhero space. Superheroes represent the best of humanity in strength of character and morality. They inspire hope and endless possibility. Once you see yourself reflected as that, you believe that anything is possible." Yeah, go there and have a look. There's a whole load of softball questions that, oh my God, it's just so sad. What does the abomination smell like? Vanilla and lavender scented candles. Okay, thank you for this wholly interesting question. I don't know how I would possibly get by without knowing this information. I'm hyped for Shang-Chi, going to see it on Friday. What is your favourite part of working for Marvel? They have excellent craft services. Okay, as you can see, the nature of these answers is not necessarily amazing, not necessarily telling you anything. And honestly, who cares? It's just a load of nonsense. People asking silly softball questions and then him throwing silly nonsense answers at them. It's just boring and it doesn't tell you anything. In any case, on with the story. Presented by a series of 5 questions by user Hot Zone Kill, which Shang-Chi comics you've read that stuck out to you? Well, who was your favourite sparring partner while filming the movie? Who would be your top choice to play Amadeus Cho? What was your favourite food item from Bopomofo, whatever the hell that is? And cheekily, why is Tim Horton so disappointing? Liu chose to only answer the 2 food-related questions. Bopomofo's Mapo taters will change your life. Tim Horton is trying too hard to do food menu items, the actor briefly replied. Ice Cap's still on point though. Have no idea what the goddamn hell that was about. I assume the person asking the questions must have some idea. But yeah, completely ignored any, comic superhero-related question there. I imagine it's because he's never heard of Amadeus Cho, is the most obvious answer. He has never heard of him. He has no idea. And I imagine he doesn't really read comics that much. Or perhaps he doesn't read, the old-fashioned comics that much. Perhaps he prefers Snowflake and Safe Space, a comic which I'm not actually sure that's ever been released yet, has it? That whole nonsense thing with the fat girl with the backpack with all the stuff in it. Was it the New Warriors? Yeah, I'm not sure if that was ever released, although I would kind of love to get hold of a copy so that I could just rip the piss out of it. On the other hand, I would rather it was never sold in the first place. It's a tough one. When you want to really, really take the piss out of something because it's going to be full of that good cringe, or maybe it should never ever be released because people don't deserve to have that in their lives. It's a really tough one sometimes. It continues. However, his inability to inspire any further confidence in his upcoming film did not hinder Liu from using the AMA as an opportunity to once again position himself and his film as godsends for Asian representation, which he almost exclusively frames as having been devoid of any significant actors since at least 2012. Well, that's because he started off acting in 2012, is what he says. And as far as he's concerned, nothing matters before he existed, is probably what he thinks. Pre-2012, there was nothing existed. Suddenly a big bang and we were all here and everything was happening immediately like this. And you get a lot of these self-centered people in Hollywood, don't you? People who don't really give a shit about anything else in the world as long as they're okay, Jack. Asked by Future is Bright for Us the standard question of, as an Asian actor, how difficult was it for you working your way up? And did you have to deal with racism, stereotyping, typecasting, etc. during that journey? Liu audaciously replied, let's put it this way. In 2012, when I first started out, I thought that maybe if I worked really hard, I could be a guy that gets beaten up by one of the main characters one day. Of course, that's what he thought. I imagine he thought, the height of my possible fame will be getting beaten up by some actual famous actor at some point. Not that I could become Bruce Lee, not that I could be in Mortal Kombat, not that I could be a very famous and popular actor and do martial arts action films, even though he doesn't actually appear to have been a martial artist. According to him, he claims that his most martial arty moment was attempting to do a backflip in the garden one day and nearly breaking his neck. Apparently he had to have training 5 hours a day, 5 days a week to learn how to do something vaguely martial arty. That's what he claims. He's probably lying. He probably did who knows what type of kung fu or something at some point, but he's probably just being witty because he likes to try and be funny rather than serious and tell you anything of any actual interest. That was the pinnacle for actors that looked like me, he bizarrely claimed. I'm ashamed to say that I put on the most ridiculous and offensive accents in the past, all because I thought it was more important to give the casting director what they wanted than to be true to myself. Of course you give the casting director what they want. They want an actor to play a certain role. If that role is, say, an American and you're English, you're probably going to have to put on an American accent because otherwise you're just going to sound like an English person. It reminds me of those old movies from the war years where you'd have Germans that were just speaking an American accent or an English accent. You think, it's supposed to be a German. You can at least make some mild effort to sound like it. But no, he feels that he should never have to do that. I'm sure he would play a great Adolf Hitler with an American accent The guy is a complete idiot. He continued, over time, as I toiled about in the industry and struggled to find my footing, I started to realize all of the ways the industry discriminated against us, and that we needed to become the masters of our own narrative, because the way that we were being portrayed was not positive or authentic, except all the positive or authentic ways that they've been portrayed in the past. I don't know why he seems to think that he and people of his era have been singled out as not being represented very nicely, even though they are represented very well. And why is it that he wants to be represented specifically well in that industry rather than, say, Hong Kong or China, where they have lots and lots of Asian-looking actors? Strange, isn't it, having lots and lots of Asian-looking actors in China and Hong Kong? How does that happen? And just as over here in the West, you'd expect lots and lots of, how should we call them? Caucasian actors? That's how life is when you live in a place where there's a majority. There's always going to be a minority and a majority. The majority are going to be the largest representation. And if they're not the largest representation, there's something completely and utterly fucked up with your society. You ever watch British adverts? Yeah, that's representative. That's why representation behind the camera is just as important as in front, he concluded. When he says representation in this way, it makes it sound like quotas. It makes him sound like he's saying we should have quotas of people that do specific things all the time. So instead of people getting through due to merit and talent, we should have a quota. Say, oh, I'm sorry, I've got too many black people today, so I know you're amazing, you're so talented, but I filled my quota. You have to go try and find a job somewhere else. I'm sorry. As that person misses a job that could have changed the world as we know it, but no, he's forgotten about because he didn't have the right skin color at the time. He wasn't white enough, he wasn't black enough, he wasn't Asian enough. Ugh, these people make me sick. Like his last declaration, wherein he claimed that Shang-Chi would give Asian kids what I didn't have, which are characters that are aspirational, that also reflect their lived experience. I'm sure that would happen in the part of the world where those people come from. There would be lots and lots of that, as there is all over the world. Do you know who the main actors in Bollywood are? They're not white people. This declaration is not only self-aggrandizing, and seems to serve no other purpose than inflating his and Disney's egos, but completely ignores the multitude of Asian actors who entered pop culture history long before Liu's career began. Not only does Liu's positioning of Shang-Chi as an oasis in a desert of Asian representation spit in the faces and careers of such legendary cinematic icons as Jackie Chan, Chow Yun-fat, Tony Jaa, Bruce Lee, whom the character of Shang-Chi was based upon, and Jet Li, but also Liu's direct MCU co-stars Chloe Bennet, Ming-Na Wen, both of Chinese heritage who headlined Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for 7 years across 136 episodes. Those people don't matter to him. What matters to him is, him? Of course, this is to say nothing of the storied careers of the decades worth of Asian cinema and television stars whose native works became Western fan favorites, including various tokusatsu and anime productions, whose openly Japanese cast and characters helped establish a strong foundation of interest in other Asian cultures in the West. In fact, without the groundwork laid by the specific career of Japanese cultural sensation Hiroshi Fujioka, whose original and continued portrayal of the very first Kamen Rider arguably served as the first spark to the widespread wave of interest in live-action superhero adaptations audiences know today. Ultimately, one can only hope that Liu's arrogance and reliance on Marvel's audience, having a total attention span of 0 seconds, turns out to be a winning marketing strategy, as Shang-Chi is currently projected to have the worst opening weekend in the history of Marvel's cinematic universe. Yeah, it's not looking great for Shang-Chi. Honestly, the way cinema has gone, what with this whole COVID-19 thing, it was never going to be absolutely great at this point. Maybe if they release it next year, it would probably do better. But then again, F9, Fast and Furious 9, did pretty damn well. Not as well as the last two Fast and Furious movies, which both made over $1 billion, but if you ignore the last two and jump back to the one before that, which was F6, I think it's about the same amount of money as F6 made. So, yeah, swings and roundabouts, but he does talk absolute rubbish. And I'm sorry, but this AMA was just such softball nonsense. It really makes you kind of sick to read it. It's just so silly. Mostly it's just him being witty and a little bit sarcastic and silly and things. There's nothing worth your time about this question and answer session. You won't learn anything, you won't get any kind of insight into anything. It's just a complete load of nonsense. And I, for one, am not even slightly interested in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I'll probably end up watching it, but I'm not going to go out of my way. We'll see. If I'm absolutely bored and have absolutely zero to do, I might head off to the cinema, but the odds aren't great. I mean, do I really want to torture myself like that? I mean, what if it's like Captain Marvel? I mean, dear God, I couldn't even stay awake through that film. I really struggled so damn much. It made me sick. Or what if it's like Black Panther? I couldn't even finish Black Panther. It took me 3 attempts to finish Captain Marvel and I didn't even finish Black Panther. It's probably going to be that sort of thing. Just a load of agenda-driven nonsense. Or at least that's how Simu Liu makes it sound. And he keeps blithering on about all this Asian stuff and how they're not being represented very well, which is all absolute crap. Anyway, this has been Movie Suck, wishing that Disney falls down a deep hole and never gets seen again. Signing out. Leave a like, share, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the flip side.